So when I was 7 to 8-ish, my parents took me to a Christmas market that had tons of activities for kids. I didn't know this at the time, but my parents were fighting and thus preoccupied and just mostly left me on my own. The way it worked was you bought some vouchers at the door and could then go inside and use one voucher for one activity. There was stuff like baking cookies, painting stuff, wood burning for older kids, etc. It was pretty fantastic. And some of the stuff had queues if there was a lot of interest. Now, I'd gotten about 10 vouchers. An activity is about 15 minutes. And my parents were in a cafe that was still in the building, but just out of sight. Since it was an area you could only get into if you accompanied a kid or were a kid, I guess they felt safe leaving me alone. This was allowed, but not encouraged. Anyway, I was queuing for my favorite activity there, the fabric painting section, where you got a piece of linen and you could draw Christmas patterns and stuff. It was already my third time, but whatever, right? I had to queue, and when I was about halfway to the entrance, someone grabbed my arm. I panicked immediately because my parents would never have touched me like that, and I didn't know anybody else that was there. I yelled and tried to pull away, but couldn't. Turning, I saw it was an older lady, maybe 40s, 50s, not sure. She was well dressed, looked pretty strict but normal. Anyway, she was pulling me out of the queue against my will. I tried to yell and asked her to let me go, but she just said something like, quote, "You always do this, come on, Marie," unquote. My name is not Marie, not even close. I yelled as much, still thinking that she just got me confused for someone else. I was a pretty average-looking girl with a brunette ponytail, nothing special, nor were my clothes. She looked down at me again, scoffed, and told me to stop throwing a tantrum. We are going home. It was at that exact moment that I realized if I didn't escape, she would take me away. So I just basically opened my mouth and screamed at the top of my lungs. Not words, just a screech. She paused mid-step because clearly I'd startled her, but didn't let go. So I just screamed about the only thing I could really make sense of. "My name is Sam. My name is Sam. My name is Sam." This was the first time people actually looked at us as more than a mom, grandma, and a kid having a tantrum, because I'm clearly too old to not know my name and also visibly scared. I was still trying to pull away, but she had a grip on my forearm like a vice. I made eye contact with the first random person I saw looking over. A guy, early 30s, I guess, definitely younger than her. I just pled for him to help me, and he actually came over at that point. We were inside of the exit. She dragged me that far, and I guess at that point she decided it was just too much of a hassle and let me go. Since I'd been fighting her, I immediately slammed to the ground, which actually prompted more people to step up to help. I was sobbing, and as soon as I could get to my feet, I ran the other way to my parents. I must have barreled into 10 plus people and kids on the way to where I knew my parents were. It was a cafe, like I said, and they were in the middle. My mom had super recognizable fake red hair, so even sobbing, I could see her. I banged into a table, I knocked stuff off, and just threw myself at my mother. I was in no state to explain, and she was both mad at me for making a scene and really worried, because I was not the type to cause a disturbance. Ever. I wanted to explain, but couldn't. There was a bit of a commotion around with people being nosy, but as I calmed down, I realized that the guy I had begged for help was explaining to my parents what had happened. I hadn't even noticed him come with, but I kind of tuned in when he kept asking if my grandma was here. Obviously, my mother confirmed that was not the case and asked if what he told her was right. He confirmed that some woman was dragging me off, calling me Marie. My parents, the guy, his son, who was a fair few years older, went with me to security, where I tried and failed to describe the lady. The guy had a much better description, but she was obviously long gone. I think they called the police, but I never spoke to any cops that I can remember. Anyway, my parents took me home ASAP, of course, and we never went to that place again. There was a short story in the newspaper the next day about a kidnapping scare, my mother told me some years later, but it was all just speculation. They didn't even confirm in the paper if it was an attempt or just a misunderstanding. Well, it sure as shit wasn't a misunderstanding. Anyway, they never caught the lady, or did any follow-ups as far as I'm aware. I was just left with the bruises on my arm where she had gripped me through my sweater. To this day, I still don't like Christmas markets. My family has been split up for some time, so normally we trade off Christmas Day and Christmas Eve every year. And this year, I had come home early from my grandparents' Christmas party while everyone else was at my aunt and uncle's celebrating at another party. When I was dropped off, my cousins offered to stay with me for a few hours, yet I declined. I thought I could watch some of my new DVDs and get some alone time in the house, which is a rarity. I had noticed an unfamiliar car parked on the street, but didn't think anything of it, considering it was Christmas Eve. Probably a neighbor's relative or something. After I got inside, I locked the door, grabbed snacks, and started to settle down. I hadn't been home for more than 15 minutes when there was a knock at the door. I unlocked the door and opened it only a crack to see a man standing there. Dark hair, glasses, slightly overweight, dressed casually. He didn't look like much of a threat, but my stomach dropped. He asked, quote, "I was wondering about the car outside. Is it for sale?" Unquote. I told him I didn't think so. Quote, "Is there someone here I can talk to about it?" Unquote. I said, and quite stupidly, I might add, "No, you can come back another time," and shut the door and turn the lock as fast as I possibly could. He reached for the handle immediately and started pounding on the door. I heard a string of profanities, and then the pounding abruptly stopped. Terrified, I was crawling on the floor to the phone, hoping he wouldn't be able to see me through one of the windows. Then I heard the noises. Our house had an open garage door, and it led through to the laundry room, where the door lock was broken and no one had bothered to fix it. Just then, I heard a man yell, and I saw the man through the window run to his car and drive off. My uncle had gotten him just in time and scared the man off. Who knows what would have happened if he hadn't made it home in time. Sadly, we didn't get the plate number, and nothing ever came of it, but I will never be home alone on a holiday again. So, for context, I'm a 22-year-old male, and I live in a large city in the Midwest. I drive for Lyft while putting myself through trade school. It was Christmas Eve 2020. I was out running Lyft for a few hours before heading to my mom's with my new baby and wife. Nothing special going on for the night, just the usual. I get a ride request. It was a pickup from this kind of lower-income apartment complex. No big deal. I arrive and I find my passenger, and he has all his belongings, like several boxes of stuff. Now, my car is a 2006 Chevy Impala, so it's not too big. We get all his stuff loaded up, barely, and we're on our way. During the ride, he's crying, saying his girlfriend was cheating on him, and he had walked in on them earlier that night. He couldn't stay there because it was her name on the lease. So, I was taking him to a hotel. Now, in my city, we have a street that's well known for having vices, hookers, drugs, gangs, weapons, and shady motels, the works. We get to the motel, and he asks me to wait for him to check in to get his key. "No problem, man," I say. I'll confess, I break the rules a little when it comes to Lyft. I have a gun, hidden in a concealed holster secured to the underside of my driver's seat for protection. Reason being, driving Lyft and other contract apps, I've had knives and guns pulled on me, as well as people have tried to fight me, rob me, and all other kinds of things. But, like I said, another time. This motel was on that street that I had mentioned before. Homeless people were everywhere. There was a dude on the far corner of the complex that still had a needle in his arm, passed out against the building. So, I'm on edge. He gets his key. The whole motel is ground level, so to help the guy out, I drive him to his door. As I mentioned before, he had a lot of stuff, so I started to help him unload. While on my second trip getting stuff, I saw a guy come out of a room just to the south of my car, followed by two ladies. They came up to the room that I was next to, not my passengers, and one of the ladies pounded on the door and then opened it. That's when I saw that guy raise a fucking shotgun up out of his long coat and storm into the room. The two ladies followed him, slamming the door behind them. Following, I heard a lot of yelling and shouting. I was just waiting for shots to ring out. Out of nowhere, my passenger runs up behind me, quote, "I can take this man, go ahead and take off, have a Merry Christmas," unquote, and he gave me a cash tip. I didn't even notice he took the boxes out of my hands or slid a $5 bill in my pocket. I was frozen. I knew what may have been going down in that room. I had to leave, or at least get to where I could get my gun. And I know the guy and both ladies saw me see them. And I know they knew I saw the gun. I had to get out of there. No witnesses. I got in my car and sped away quickly. I got a block or so away and called the cops. I gave them every detail. After I got off the phone with the police, I signed out of Lyft. I hadn't made much money, but I was done. I got a call later that night. The cops had investigated. They never found the gunman or the women. They never entered that door I saw them come out of. And the occupants of the room they went into said nothing happened and that I was full of shit. Well, I know what I saw. One time when I was a teenager, maybe 14, 15 years old, me and my friend used to go out after we got home from school. We would smoke and take walks. But this one time, it was winter, so it got dark quickly. We were walking past this activity center that was closed, so all the lights were off, just a couple of street lamps in the car park. And at the end of the car park, there was a small field where people would walk their dogs, and it had some benches around the borders. We decided to go to the end of the car park and sit on the first bench and have a smoke before we go back home. After being sat there for a couple of minutes or so, we looked out onto the pitch-black field, and we both got a horrible and uneasy feeling. We got up and we noticed about 20 meters away there was a whole group of people lying in a circle from head to toe with their hoods up and their eyes wide open. We stood and stared for a few seconds thinking, what the fuck? They were all wearing the same thing, like black long coats with hoods, and we couldn't fully make out everything because it was so dark. But it was just the creepiest thing. Even though their eyes were open, they didn't look like they were looking at anything at all, just staring into thin air. We both looked at each other and just started running to the closest main road so we felt safer. Still to this day, I wonder if it was some kind of ritual or something like that. I'm not sure. For years, me and my friend just told ourselves they were stargazing, even though with the light pollution of the street lamps, it was hard to even see any stars. And just the horrible vibe from the whole situation makes me believe something darker was going on. So, here's a story. First, a little background. When I was 16, I worked at a grocery store as a stalker. The store closed at midnight, and we would often work later than that, as it was easier to stock the aisles without all the damn people in the way. It was around Christmas time, and unfortunately, I had to work on Christmas Eve. Stupid, I know. We typically had Christmas down at my grandparents' place in rural East Texas, about an hour and a half away. And since I had to work, I told my parents to go ahead without me, and I'll head their way once I got off work. My grandparents lived in a gated community called Steamboat Shores, and it was lined with mobile homes, which were mostly filled with old people waiting to die. I had gotten my driver's license only about a month and a half ago, and this would be my first somewhat long drive late at night. I felt confident in the drive. I mean, it was only an hour and a half. I had been along those roads many times as a passenger, so whatever. No biggie. My mom told me to call once I had gotten off. They cut us loose around midnight. Hey Mom, they just let us go, so I'll be getting in around 1:30, 1:45. All right, honey, I'll wait up for you. See you in a little bit. Love you. Love you too. The first 45 minutes-ish part of the drive is a fairly monotonous affair through a series of small, podunk Texas towns that no one knows the name of. These little towns are creepier than I remember at night, I thought. I felt like a lost pack animal looking for its herd while I drove through each town. The last 45 minutes gets increasingly dark and rural. There's really not much out there minus cows grazing in fields and the occasional ramshackle house. This was before smartphones were ubiquitous, so I had the directions written down on a piece of paper, although, since I had been along this road many times before, I generally knew the landmarks for where I should turn. When I was roughly 7 to 8 minutes away, I would take a left at a local grocery store called Brookshire's, and then another left after about 5 miles at the Lake Fork Bank. Boom, I would be at the front gate of the community. The tricky thing is that it's very easy to lose track of time along these roads since everything looks the same. I feel like I should be getting close to Brookshire's. No? I didn't pass it already, did I? I haven't been on this road that long. Well, maybe I have. Maybe I'll go another 10 minutes and see if I see it. If not, I'll drive until the next intersection and see what the crossroads are and call Mom. As I pull out my phone, I notice in the top left part of the screen, 0 bars. Damn it. I guess I'll just pull up to the next house I see and ask them? It's so late though, but I guess it's better than nothing. After what seemed like a half hour, but was probably closer to 10 minutes, I see a poorly maintained house approaching on my left side. I start easing off the gas to pull into the driveway. Ugh, really not the biggest fan of this whole situation right now, but I'm sure it's fine, so whatever. Wait, is that a police car next to the house? Sweet! I'll ask him. Not really sure why he's just sitting next to a random house, but what does it matter? I swerve back onto the road and pull up next to the police car that's parked about 30 feet from the house. Hi, officer. Yeah, I was curious if I was close to a Brookshire's. I think I'm a little lost, and I was supposed to take a turn. Brookshire's? Yeah, it's actually about 7 miles back the other way. It'll be on your right-hand side. You shouldn't miss it. Aw, damn it. All right, thanks for the help, officer. Wait, hold on a second, son. I saw you swerve a little bit before you pulled in here. Have you been drinking tonight? I just got off work and I'm heading to my grandparents for Christmas. All right, son. These parts are known for young idiots driving around 3 sheets to the wind, especially around the holidays, so I'd prefer to go ahead and run your driver's license and check your registration. No, that's fine. I understand that. I get out of my truck and hand him my information. He quickly types in my license number. All right, you're good to go. Sorry about that. It's better on my part to be safe rather than sorry. You understand, kid? Yes, sir. Thanks. Thanks for the help. Merry Christmas. I pull out of the house's front yard and head back in the direction I came. When I'm maybe 250, 300 feet away from the house, I look in my rearview mirror and see a pair of headlights pull out of the driveway towards me. It isn't the police car. Maybe they had somewhere to go as well. Probably nothing. In less than a minute, the headlights are right behind me. Maybe I'm driving too slow and they just wanna pass. I drift my truck slightly to the right, but they don't pass. That is weird. Boom. They blast their high beams and flood my truck with light. What the f***? This is getting super weird. After about 2 minutes of this, they turn their headlights off completely. The vehicle behind me appears to vanish into the night. I am so f***ed. After 3 to 4 minutes of this, they return their headlights back to normal, steadily riding my bumper. What the f*** do I do? I still don't have a phone signal. Why the f*** is this vehicle following me? I eventually see the bright, neon red Brookshire sign shining like a SOS beacon. Alright, once I get closer to the store, I'm going to fishtail around the turn and put the pedal to the floor all the way to the front gate of my parents. Wait for it. Vroom! I fishtail around the turn so hard, hitting the vehicle behind me with rocks as I took off as fast as I could. They kept up with me the whole time. Alright, there's the bank, almost there. Still right behind me. Turn left, cross the bridge, there's the gate. I mash on the gate opener button on my truck visor and it starts opening as I'm about to pull up. Pull in, get away from this psycho. Yes, made it. I watch the gate slowly close behind me as the vehicle pulls up. It was so satisfying hearing the sound of the gate locking. Get you piece of shit. I toss my truck and park, get out and walk towards the closed gate. As I do, the window of the Jeep starts rolling down, and I catch a glimpse of pure white hair. What the heck? It's 2 grandmas in a Jeep with a shotgun. Hey there, Sonny, we didn't mean to scare you. What the fuck is y'all's problem? You could have caused a f***ing accident. What are you doing? No, we didn't mean to do that. We thought you might have been a snitch. We just wanted to see who you were. A snitch? Yeah. One of our in-laws just got out the clink. We thought you might have been after him. So apparently one of these old lady's relatives had just gotten out of prison. They said this person had gotten a better deal by ratting out some other people, but they didn't say what the crime was, nor did I press the conversation. That's why there was a police car next to their house. I asked them why they turned their headlights off. Well, they had night vision goggles and were trying to see if I was a man or a woman. What the I eventually made it to my grandparents' place, my mother still awake. She says, "Why are you so late? What took you so long?" I told her I was being hunted by grandmas, Ma. But they can't catch the bearded millennial.